The first shot rang out just as Nora Jenkins stepped off the stagecoach in Salida, Colorado, sending her diving for cover behind a water trough. It was May of 1874, and this wasn't exactly the welcome she had imagined when she'd left Philadelphia 3 weeks prior. The dust kicked up around her feet as more gunfire echoed down the main street. She clutched her satchel to her chest, heart hammering against her ribs. "Get down, miss," a rough voice called out. A man slid to the ground beside her, his weathered face shadowed by a worn Stetson. "Seems you've arrived during one of our less peaceful afternoons." "What's happening?" Nora asked, flinching as another bullet splintered wood somewhere nearby, just Reeves and his boys causing trouble again. The stranger offered a hand to her. "Name's Nathan Prescott." "Most folks just call me Nate." "Nora Jenkins," she replied, cautiously accepting his hand. His fingers were calloused but gentle. "I'm supposed to be meeting my uncle. He owns the apothecary." Recognition flashed in Nathan's blue eyes. "Old Samuel Jenkins, that's your uncle." When she nodded, he smiled. Well, he didn't mention having such a pretty niece coming to town. Before Nora could respond, the shooting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. She heard shouting, then hoofbeats pounding away. "Looks like they're gone for now," Nathan said, standing slowly and helping Nora to her feet. Her legs felt wobbly, and she stumbled slightly against him. His arm steadied her, strong and secure. "Thank you," she murmured, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. She stepped back, smoothing down her travel-worn skirts. "I should find my uncle." "Allow me to escort you," Nathan offered, tipping his hat. "Salida can be a bit rough around the edges, as you just witnessed, but it's not always this exciting." As they walked down the dusty main street, Nora couldn't help noticing how people nodded respectfully to Nathan. A few men called out greetings, while women watched them pass with curious expressions. "Are you the sheriff?" she asked, noting the absence of a badge on his leather vest. Nathan laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "No, madam, just a rancher. Got a spread about 5 miles outside of town, the Double P, not the biggest ranch in Colorado, but it's mine." They reached a storefront with Jenkins Apothecary painted in neat letters above the door. Before they could enter, the door swung open and a bespectacled older man rushed out. "Nora, my dear girl," Samuel Jenkins embraced his niece. "I heard the commotion and feared your stage had been caught in it." "I'm fine, Uncle Samuel," Nora assured him. "Thanks to Mr. Prescott here." Samuel turned to Nathan with a wide smile. "Nathan, I should have known you'd be the one to look after my niece. Come in, both of you, come in." The apothecary smelled of herbs and tinctures, bringing Nora back to her childhood visits to her uncle's previous shop in Denver. She breathed in the familiar scents as Samuel bustled about, closing the shop for the day. "Nora will be helping me with the business," Samuel explained to Nathan. "She has quite the knowledge of medicines and healing, learned from her mother, my sister, before she passed." Nathan studied Nora with new interest. "Is that so? We could use more healing hands in Salida." "I've been studying formally as well," Nora said, "though medical colleges aren't particularly welcoming to women." "Their loss," Nathan replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Our gain." Samuel cleared his throat. "Nathan, would you join us for supper? It's the least I can offer for your assistance today." "I'd be honored," Nathan replied, "but first I should see the sheriff about Reeves and his gang. They're getting bolder." After Nathan left, Samuel showed Nora to the rooms behind the shop where they would live. It was modest but comfortable, with a small kitchen and 2 bedrooms. "Your Mr. Prescott seems quite taken with you," Samuel remarked as Nora unpacked her trunk. "He's hardly my Mr. Prescott," Nora protested, though she couldn't deny the flutter she'd felt when those blue eyes had locked with hers. "And I'm not here for romance, Uncle. I'm here to work and study." "Of course," Samuel agreed with a twinkle in his eye, "but Nathan is a good man. One of the best in these parts, honest, hardworking, built that ranch from nothing." "Uncle," Nora said warningly. Samuel raised his hands in surrender. "Just providing information about the town and its citizens, that's all." When Nathan returned for supper, he'd clearly taken time to clean up. His dark hair was damp and combed back, and he wore a clean shirt under his vest. He brought a bottle of good whiskey and a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For the table," he said, handing the flowers to Nora with a sheepish smile. The conversation flowed easily over the simple meal of stew and biscuits. Nathan spoke of his ranch and the challenges of the last winter, while Samuel shared news of the town. Nora found herself drawn to Nathan's stories and the passion in his voice when he spoke of his horses. "You should see them, Miss Jenkins," he said. "Finest quarter horses this side of the Mississippi, been breeding them for speed and endurance." "I'd like that," Nora replied honestly. "I used to ride quite a bit in Philadelphia, though I imagine Western riding is quite different." "I'd be happy to teach you," Nathan offered quickly. Then, as if catching himself being too forward, he added, "That is, if you're interested." Samuel beamed between them, clearly pleased with the direction of their conversation. After supper, Nathan helped clear the table, ignoring Samuel's protests. As they worked side by side, Nora became acutely aware of his presence, the clean scent of soap mixed with leather, the way his sleeves were rolled up to reveal tanned forearms, the gentle care with which he handled her uncle's dishes. "Will you be staying in Salida long?" Nathan asked as he dried the last plate. "I plan to make it my home," Nora replied. "Philadelphia holds too many painful memories now, and Uncle Samuel needs the help." "I'm glad to hear it," Nathan said softly. "Salida could use more people like you." When it came time for him to leave, Nathan hesitated at the door. "There's a town social on Saturday night, just a simple gathering with music and dancing. Perhaps you'd allow me to escort you. It would be a good way to meet the townspeople." Before Nora could respond, Samuel jumped in. "What a splendid idea. Nora would be delighted, wouldn't you, my dear?" Nora shot her uncle an exasperated look but couldn't deny her own interest. "That would be lovely, Mr. Prescott." "Nate," he corrected with a smile. "If we're going to be friends, you should call me Nate." "Nate," she repeated, liking the way his name felt on her lips. "Then I'll see you Saturday." The next few days passed in a blur as Nora settled into life at the apothecary. She learned the inventory, organized the shelves to her liking, and began making her own tinctures and salves. Word spread quickly about the new lady doctor in town, and women began coming in with ailments they had been too embarrassed to discuss with her uncle. By Saturday, Nora had already treated a minor's infected hand, advised 3 expectant mothers, and created a special cream for a young girl's rash. She found the work deeply satisfying, but her thoughts kept drifting to Nathan and their upcoming evening. When he arrived to escort her to the social, Nora felt an unexpected flutter of nerves. She had chosen her best dress, a deep blue that brought out her eyes, and arranged her chestnut hair in a simple but elegant style. Nathan stood in the doorway, hat in hand, looking at her as if she were the only star in the night sky. "Miss Jenkins," he breathed, "you look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "And please call me Nora." The social was held in the town hall, a simple building that had been transformed with lanterns and bunting. A small band played lively tunes, and the dance floor was already crowded with couples. As Nathan led her inside, Nora noticed heads turning their way. Women whispered behind fans, and men nudged each other. "I think we're causing quite a stir," she murmured to Nathan. He smiled down at her. "That's because you're the most beautiful woman in the room." "Or perhaps it's because the eligible bachelor of Salida is finally showing interest in someone," she countered, having heard enough town gossip over the past days to know that Nathan was considered quite the catch. His laugh was warm. "Maybe a bit of both." Nathan introduced her to what felt like half the town: the sheriff and his wife, the banker, the school teacher, ranchers and merchants and miners. Nora tried to remember all their names, but they blurred together in a sea of friendly faces and curious eyes. When the band struck up a waltz, Nathan turned to her. "May I have this dance?" Nora hesitated. "I should warn you, it's been some time since I've danced." "Don't worry," he said, taking her hand. "I'll lead." And lead he did, guiding her through the waltz with confident steps. For a rancher, he moved with surprising grace. Nora found herself relaxing in his arms, following his lead as they swirled among the other couples. "You dance very well for a cowboy," she teased. "My mother insisted," he replied with a grin. "Said no son of hers would stomp around like a bull, no matter how much I protested." As the evening progressed, they danced several more times. During a break, Nathan fetched them cups of punch and they stepped outside for some air. The night was cool, with a blanket of stars overhead that took Nora's breath away. "It's beautiful," she whispered, gazing upward. "Yes," Nathan agreed, but when she looked at him, he was watching her, not the stars. Their eyes held, and Nora felt something shift between them, a recognition, a possibility. Then a loud burst of laughter from inside broke the moment. "I should probably get back to Uncle Samuel," Nora said reluctantly. "He'll be wondering where I am." Nathan nodded. "Of course." As they walked back to the apothecary, his hand brushed against hers, then tentatively took it. Nora didn't pull away, enjoying the warmth of his touch in the cool night air. At her door, Nathan hesitated. "I'd like to call on you properly, Nora, with your uncle's permission, of course." "I'd like that," she replied softly. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. When she didn't, he placed a gentle kiss on her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. "Good night, Nora Jenkins," he whispered. "Good night, Nate." The weeks that followed fell into a pleasant rhythm. Nathan called on Nora regularly, sometimes taking her for rides in his buggy, other times simply helping at the apothecary. He brought her wildflowers and books, and once a beautiful hand-carved wooden box for her herbs. Nora found herself looking forward to his visits, her heart quickening whenever she heard his boots on the boardwalk. They talked easily about everything: her medical studies, his ranch, their hopes and disappointments. He made her laugh with tales of his early ranching mistakes, and she shared stories of her childhood in Philadelphia. One warm afternoon in late June, Nathan invited her to visit his ranch. "I'd like to show you the Double P," he said, "and those horses I've been telling you about." With her uncle's blessing and thinly veiled delight, Nora agreed. The next day, Nathan arrived with his buggy, and they set off for the 5-mile journey to his property. As they crested a hill, Nathan pulled the horses to a stop. Below them stretched a verdant valley with a creek winding through it. A neat ranch house stood near a cluster of barns and corrals where horses grazed in the summer sun. "Welcome to the Double P," Nathan said, pride evident in his voice. "It's beautiful," Nora breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. As they drove closer, Nora noticed the well-maintained fences and buildings. Everything spoke of care and attention to detail. A few ranch hands called greetings as they arrived, tipping their hats respectfully to Nora. Nathan gave her a tour of the main house, first a surprisingly comfortable 2-story structure with simple but good quality furnishings. A housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, had prepared lunch, which they enjoyed on the wide front porch overlooking the valley. "You've built something wonderful here," Nora told him. Nathan's expression softened. "It was my father's dream. He died before he could see it come true, but I like to think he'd be proud." "I'm sure he would be," Nora assured him, impulsively reaching for his hand. After lunch, Nathan took her to see his prized horses. As he'd promised, they were magnificent animals, strong, intelligent, and clearly well cared for. Nathan spoke to each by name, and they responded to him with trust and affection. "Would you like to ride?" he asked, gesturing to a gentle-looking mare. "Daisy here is perfect for beginners in Western riding." Nora hesitated. "I'm not dressed for it." Nathan disappeared into a nearby shed and returned with a split riding skirt. "This belonged to my sister. She lives in Denver now with her husband, but she left a few things behind. It might fit you." After changing in the house, Nora emerged feeling both excited and nervous. Nathan had saddled Daisy and was waiting patiently in the corral. "The main difference from what you're used to is the saddle," he explained, showing her the Western saddle with its horn and deep seat. "And we ride with looser reins. The horse knows what to do, you just guide gently." Under his careful instruction, Nora soon found herself trotting comfortably around the corral. The Western saddle felt secure, and Daisy responded to the lightest touch. "You're a natural," Nathan called, watching her with obvious pleasure. Emboldened, Nora asked, "Could we go for a short ride?" "Just around the property," Nathan readily agreed, saddling his own horse, a striking black gelding named Thunder. They set off at a leisurely pace, with Nathan pointing out various features of his land. They rode alongside the creek, through a stand of cottonwoods, and up to a small rise that offered a view of the distant mountains. "I come here sometimes to think," Nathan said as they dismounted to rest the horses. Helps put things in perspective. They sat on a fallen log, the horses grazing nearby. The afternoon sun warmed Nora's face as she gazed out at the landscape. She felt a profound peace here, a sense of rightness she hadn't expected. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she said, turning to find Nathan watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "Nora," he began, his voice husky, "these past weeks, getting to know you, they've been the happiest of my life." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I know it hasn't been long, but I've never felt this way about anyone. When I'm not with you, I'm thinking about you. When I am with you, I never want to leave." Nora's heart raced. "I feel the same," she admitted softly. Nathan lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "May I court you properly, with the intention of seeing if what we feel could grow into something permanent?" "Yes," Nora whispered, happiness bubbling through her like champagne. "I'd like that very much." The ride back to the ranch was filled with shared smiles and lingering glances. As they approached the house, Nora noticed a buggy in the yard that hadn't been there before. A well-dressed man stood on the porch, speaking with one of the ranch hands. Nathan frowned. "That's Edward Blackwell, the banker's son. Wonder what brings him out here." As they rode into the yard, Blackwell turned, his expression changing from impatience to interest as he spotted Nora. "Prescott," he greeted, ignoring Nathan's outstretched hand and instead focusing on Nora as she dismounted. "And who might this lovely lady be?" "Miss Nora Jenkins," Nathan introduced her, his tone cooling noticeably. "Mr. Edward Blackwell. His father owns the bank in town." "A pleasure, Miss Jenkins," Blackwell said, taking her hand and holding it longer than necessary. "I don't believe I've had the honor of making your acquaintance in town. Miss Jenkins is Samuel Jenkins' niece," Nathan explained, stepping closer to Nora. "She's helping at the apothecary." "Ah, the new lady doctor everyone's talking about," Blackwell said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How progressive," Nora withdrew her hand, disliking his condescending tone. "Was there something you needed, Mr. Blackwell?" "Business with Prescott," he replied, dismissing her with a glance. "Boring financial matters." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Miss Jenkins has a keen mind for business as well as medicine. You do well not to underestimate her." Blackwell raised an eyebrow. "Indeed. Well, I'll keep that in mind." He turned back to Nathan. "My father sent me to discuss the loan for your new breeding stock. There's been a complication." Nathan frowned. "What kind of complication?" "The terms were agreed upon." "Perhaps we could discuss this privately," Blackwell suggested, glancing meaningfully at Nora. "I should check on Mrs. Rodriguez," Nora said tactfully. "See if she needs help with anything." Nathan looked reluctant to let her go but nodded. "I won't be long." As Nora walked toward the house, she could feel Blackwell's eyes on her back. Something about the man made her uneasy, though she couldn't put her finger on why. Inside, Mrs. Rodriguez was preparing coffee. "Men and their business," she said with a knowing look. "Always so serious. Mr. Nathan, he works too hard. Has he been having financial difficulties?" Nora asked carefully, not wanting to pry but concerned by Blackwell's unexpected visit. "The ranch does well," Mrs. Rodriguez replied, "but Mr. Nathan, he wants to expand. The new breeding program costs much money." She lowered her voice. "That Blackwell, he is not a good man. His father is fair, but the son." She made a dismissive gesture. When Nathan finally came back inside, his expression was troubled. He tried to hide it when he saw Nora, but she had become adept at reading his moods. "Everything all right?" she asked as Mrs. Rodriguez tactfully retreated to the kitchen. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just business. Nothing for you to worry about." "I'd like to worry about it if it concerns you," Nora said gently, his expression softened. "The bank's changing the loan terms. Higher interest, shorter repayment schedule. Makes it almost impossible for me to afford the new breeding stock I've been planning for." "Can they do that?" "If you've already agreed on terms." "Nothing was signed yet," Nathan admitted. "I was waiting for the horses to be available first." "Blackwell claims market conditions have changed." His mouth twisted. "But I think it's more personal than that." "What do you mean?" Nathan hesitated. "Edward Blackwell isn't used to not getting what he wants, and lately he's been showing interest in a certain lady doctor new to town." Nora's eyes widened. You think he's doing this because of me, but I've barely spoken to the man. You wouldn't need to, Nathan said grimly. Just existing and not falling at his feet would be enough to annoy him, and now seeing you here with me. That's ridiculous, Nora protested. Surely he wouldn't jeopardize a business arrangement out of. What? Jealousy, spite, you don't know Blackwell, Nathan said. He's been this way since we were boys, always had to win, always had to have the best of everything, and if he couldn't have it, he'd make sure no one else could either. Nora's mind raced. There must be something we can do. Could you appeal to his father or seek financing elsewhere? Old man Blackwell is in Denver on business for a month, as for other options. Nathan shook his head. The nearest other bank is in Pueblo and they don't know me. No reason to trust me with that kind of money. What about a private investor? Nora suggested. Someone who believes in what you're doing here. Nathan looked at her thoughtfully. That's not a bad idea. I know a few ranchers who might be interested in a partnership. It wouldn't be ideal, I'd have to give up some control, but it could work. Nora smiled, relieved to see the worry easing from his face. See, not all is lost. Nathan reached for her hand. What did I do to deserve you walking into my life, Nora Jenkins? You dove behind a water trough to save me from gunfire, she reminded him with a laugh. Quite the first impression. The ride back to town was quieter, both of them lost in thought. As they approached Salida, Nathan broke the silence. Would you be free tomorrow evening? For dinner at the hotel restaurant. I'd like to make up for today ending on such a sour note. I'd love that, Nora replied. When Nathan helped her down from the buggy in front of the apothecary, he held her hand a moment longer than necessary. Until tomorrow, he said softly. Until tomorrow, she echoed, reluctant to say goodbye. Inside, Samuel was waiting with eager questions about her day. Nora told him about the ranch and the horses, but kept Nathan's financial troubles to herself. It wasn't her place to share that information. He's quite taken with you, Samuel observed. This time, Nora didn't protest. The feeling is mutual, she admitted. Samuel beamed. I couldn't be happier, my dear. Nathan is like a son to me. The following evening, Nora took special care with her appearance. She wore her newest dress, a green silk that she'd brought from Philadelphia, and arranged her hair in an elegant chignon. When Nathan arrived to escort her, his appreciative gaze made the effort worthwhile. You look stunning, he said, offering her his arm. The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in Salida, with white tablecloths and a small string trio playing in the corner. As Nathan led Nora to a table, she noticed several familiar faces from the social and noted the whispers and glances that followed them. Clearly, their courtship was becoming the talk of the town. They had just been served their soup when the door opened, and Edward Blackwell walked in with a striking blonde woman on his arm. His gaze swept the room, landing on Nora and Nathan with calculated surprise. Prescott, he called, steering his companion toward their table. What a coincidence. Nathan stood politely, though Nora could see the tension in his shoulders. Blackwell, Miss Jenkins, Blackwell nodded to Nora. May I present Miss Caroline Miller? Caroline, this is Nathan Prescott and Miss Nora Jenkins. Miss Miller simpered. A pleasure. Edward has told me so much about you both. Won't you join us? Blackwell asked, already pulling out a chair for Miss Miller beside Nora. Before Nathan could respond, a waiter appeared with another table setting. Nora shot Nathan a sympathetic look as Blackwell seated himself with evident satisfaction. So, Prescott, have you decided what to do about our little financial matter? Blackwell asked as soon as they were settled. Nathan's jaw tightened. I'm exploring options. Options? In Salida? Blackwell laughed. Good luck with that. He turned to Nora. Has he told you about his grand plans, quite ambitious for a man of his background? I find ambition admirable, Nora replied coolly. Especially when coupled with hard work and integrity. Blackwell's smile faltered briefly. Indeed, though sometimes ambition outstrips ability. And sometimes envy masquerades as concern, Nora countered, maintaining her polite tone. A flash of anger crossed Blackwell's face, quickly concealed. Miss Miller is visiting from Denver, he said, changing the subject. Her father owns several businesses there, including a rather successful pharmaceutical company. Miss Miller preened. Daddy says we'll expand to Colorado Springs next year, and perhaps even this charming little town. How interesting, Nora replied, understanding the implied threat to her uncle's business. Though I find small, specialized apothecaries often serve their communities better than large companies. The personal touch, you know. Throughout the meal, Blackwell continued his subtle jabs at Nathan's prospects and Nora's unconventional career. Nathan remained polite but increasingly terse, while Nora parried Blackwell's barbs with careful ripostes of her own. By the time dessert was served, the tension at the table was palpable. Miss Miller, seemingly oblivious, chattered about Denver society and her father's wealth. Nora caught Nathan's eye across the table and saw his barely suppressed frustration. "Perhaps we should call it a night," Nathan finally suggested after they'd finished their coffee. "It's getting late. So soon?" Blackwell asked with mock disappointment, "but we were having such a stimulating conversation." As they stood to leave, Blackwell placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "Think about my offer, Prescott. It's the best you're going to get." "I'll consider it," Nathan replied stiffly. Outside in the cool evening air, Nathan's controlled expression finally cracked. "I apologize for that," he said as they walked away from the hotel. "He followed us there deliberately." "It's not your fault," Nora assured him. "Though I admit I've rarely met someone so determined to be unpleasant." Nathan laughed despite himself. "That's Blackwell, always has been." He took her hand. "Thank you for defending me in there. Not many would stand up to the richest man in town." "He's not the richest man," Nora corrected. "His father is, and he's just a bully with a fancy suit." Nathan's expression softened as he looked down at her. "You're remarkable, Nora Jenkins." They walked slowly back to the apothecary, neither in a hurry to end the evening despite its unexpected complications. At the door, Nathan hesitated. "Tomorrow, I'll be riding to the Davidson Ranch to discuss a possible partnership," he said. "I might not be able to call on you for a few days." "I understand," Nora replied. "I hope it goes well." "So do I," he said fervently. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he leaned down and kissed her not on the cheek this time, but gently on the lips. It was brief but tender, and Nora felt the warmth of it all the way to her toes. "Good night, Nora," he whispered. "Good night, Nate." The next few days passed slowly for Nora. She threw herself into her work at the apothecary, creating new remedies and treating a steady stream of patients. News of her medical knowledge had spread, and people came from surrounding farms and ranches to seek her advice. On the fourth day after their dinner, the bell above the shop door jingled, and Nora looked up expecting another patient. Instead, she found Edward Blackwell standing there examining the shelves with a critical eye. "Mr. Blackwell," she greeted cautiously. "What can I do for you, Miss Jenkins?" he replied with a thin smile. "I thought I'd stop by to see this establishment my father is considering investing in." Nora raised an eyebrow. "Investing? This is my uncle's business. He hasn't mentioned seeking investors." "No, but circumstances change," Blackwell said, running a finger along a shelf and inspecting it for dust, "especially for small businesses in competitive times." Samuel emerged from the back room, surprise registering on his face. "Mr. Blackwell, what brings you here today?" "Just discussing business opportunities with your niece," Blackwell replied smoothly. "I was explaining how my father's bank might be interested in helping you expand." "For a share of ownership, of course," Samuel frowned. "I'm quite content with the size of my business, thank you." "For now, perhaps," Blackwell agreed. "But with Miller Pharmaceuticals coming to the region, well, competition can be difficult for small operations like yours." "Is that a threat, Mr. Blackwell?" Nora asked directly. Blackwell looked affronted. "A threat? Hardly. Just a businessman observing market realities." He turned back to Samuel. "Think about it, Jenkins. My father returns next week. We can discuss terms then." After he left, Samuel turned to Nora with a worried expression. "What was that about?" Nora explained about Miss Miller and her father's company, and her suspicion that Blackwell was using business to wage a personal vendetta. "But why?" Samuel asked. "What quarrel does he have with us?" Nora hesitated. "I believe it has to do with Nathan, and possibly with me." Understanding dawned on Samuel's face. "Ah, I see," he sighed. "Edward Blackwell has always been used to getting his way. His father indulged him terribly after his mother died. What should we do?" Nora asked, concerned for her uncle's business. Samuel patted her hand. Don't worry, my dear. The people of Salida know me. They know the quality of my medicines. A fancy new company won't change that. But Nora wasn't so sure. She'd seen how pharmaceutical companies operated in Philadelphia, undercutting small businesses until they were forced to sell. If Miller Pharmaceuticals came to Salida with Blackwell's backing, her uncle's apothecary could be in real trouble. That evening, as Nora was closing up the shop, she heard the now familiar sound of hoofbeats outside. Her heart lifted as she hurried to the door, opening it to find Nathan dismounting from his horse. "Nate," she exclaimed, unable to hide her pleasure at seeing him. "You're back." His smile was tired but genuine as he climbed the steps to the porch. "I rode straight here from the Davidson ranch," he said, taking off his hat. "I wanted to see you." In the fading light, Nora could see the dust of the trail on his clothes and the exhaustion in his eyes. "Come inside," she urged. "You look dead on your feet." In the kitchen, she made him coffee while he washed up at the basin. Samuel had gone to a town council meeting, leaving them alone. "How did it go with the Davidsons?" Nora asked as Nathan sat heavily at the table. "Better than I expected," he replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Old man Davidson likes my breeding program. He's willing to invest enough to cover what I need in exchange for first pick of the foals for the next 3 years." "That's wonderful," Nora exclaimed. "So you don't need Blackwell's loan after all?" "No," Nathan confirmed with satisfaction. "I can tell him exactly what he can do with his offer." Nora hesitated. Speaking of Blackwell, he came to the apothecary today. Nathan's expression darkened as she related the conversation. "So he's moving against your uncle now, because of us." "It seems that way," Nora agreed, though he was careful not to say it outright. Nathan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm sorry, Nora, I never meant to bring this trouble to your door. It's not your fault," she insisted. "Blackwell is making his own choices. We're not responsible for his pettiness." Nathan reached across the table to take her hand. "You're too good for this town, Nora Jenkins. Too good for me, that's for certain." "Don't say that," she protested. "You're the finest man I've ever known, Nathan Prescott." His eyes softened as he looked at her. "I love you, Nora. I think I have since that first day behind the water trough." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Nora's heart felt too full for her chest. "I love you too," she whispered, the truth of it washing through her like a cleansing rain. Nathan stood, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. This time when he kissed her, there was nothing hesitant about it. His lips claimed hers with a passion that left her breathless, and Nora responded in kind, her arms winding around his neck. When they finally broke apart, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said softly. "Be my wife, my partner. Share the double P with me." "Yes," Nora answered without hesitation. "Yes, I will." The news of their engagement spread through Salida like wildfire. Most people offered congratulations, though a few raised eyebrows at the speed of the courtship. Samuel was ecstatic, immediately beginning plans for a celebration. Edward Blackwell's reaction was less enthusiastic. When Nathan formally declined the bank's loan offer, citing his new partnership with the Davidsons, Blackwell's face had darkened with anger. "You're making a mistake, Prescott," he warned. "This town isn't big enough for people who cross me." "Is that so?" Nathan replied evenly. "Seems to me Salida's been big enough for both of us so far. I don't see why that needs to change." The confrontation took place on the main street with several townspeople watching. When Blackwell stormed off, muttering threats, Sheriff Davis approached Nathan with a concerned expression. "Watch your back, Nate," he advised. "Blackwell's got a mean streak when he's crossed." "I'm not worried about him," Nathan replied, though he made sure to keep his rifle closer at hand when riding the range in the days that followed. The real trouble began a week later, when Samuel's regular suppliers suddenly claimed they couldn't fulfill his orders. Then customers started canceling appointments, citing mysterious concerns about the quality of his medicines. "It's Blackwell," Nora fumed as another farmer left without purchasing the tonic he'd been buying monthly for years. "He's spreading rumors about us." Samuel looked worried for the first time. "If this continues, we won't be able to stay in business." That evening, when Nathan called, Nora told him what was happening. His expression grew grim. "He's doing the same to me," he admitted. Davidson's son came by today to say they're reconsidering our agreement. Apparently, someone told them I have gambling debts in Denver. That's absurd, Nora exclaimed. You don't gamble, no, but the rumor's spreading anyway. Nathan paced the small kitchen. And that's not all. 2 of my ranch hands quit this morning, said they heard I couldn't make payroll next month. Nora's mind raced. We need to confront him directly, make him stop. I tried that, Nathan said. He just laughed and said he had no idea what I was talking about. They sat in troubled silence until Samuel spoke up. Perhaps we should consider his offer, for the apothecary at least. Uncle, Nora protested, we can't let him win like that. It's not about winning, my dear, Samuel said gently. It's about survival if we can't get supplies or customers. No, Nathan said firmly. There has to be another way. The next morning, Nora awoke to the smell of smoke. She rushed to the window to see flames leaping from the shed behind the apothecary where Samuel stored extra supplies and herbs. Fire. She shouted, throwing on a robe and rushing downstairs. Samuel was already outside with a bucket, trying desperately to control the blaze. Neighbors appeared with more water, forming a bucket line from the town well. By the time the fire was extinguished, the shed was a smoking ruin, and several of the herbs growing beside it were destroyed. Nora stood in the wreckage, soot-streaked and shocked. This was deliberate, Sheriff Davis said, kneeling to examine the remains. Someone poured coal oil around the foundation. Blackwell, Nora said with certainty. Now, Miss Jenkins, the sheriff cautioned, that's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? You know as well as I do who's behind this, she insisted. He's been threatening us for weeks. Threats aren't the same as arson, Davis replied. I can't arrest a man on suspicion alone, especially not someone like Edward Blackwell. When Nathan arrived, having heard the news from a passing rider, his face was thunderous. This has gone too far, he said, surveying the damage. I'm going to settle this once and for all. Nathan, no, Nora pleaded, grabbing his arm. That's what he wants to provoke you into doing something rash. She's right, son, Samuel agreed. Violence isn't the answer, but Nathan's expression remained resolute. I'm not going to stand by while he destroys everything we care about. There has to be a reckoning. Despite their protests, Nathan mounted his horse and rode toward the bank. Nora exchanged a worried glance with her uncle before hurrying after him, her skirts clutched in her hands as she ran down the street. She reached the bank just as Nathan was dismounting. A crowd had gathered, sensing conflict and eager for entertainment. Edward Blackwell stood on the bank steps, watching Nathan's approach with a smirk. Come to reconsider my offer, Prescott, he called. I've come to end this, Nathan replied, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed street. Your quarrel is with me. Leave the Jenkins family out of it. Blackwell laughed. I don't know what you're talking about. The fire, Nathan said, stepping closer. The rumors. The suppliers suddenly canceling orders. It stops now, Blackwell. Or what? Blackwell challenged, his hand drifting toward his coat pocket where Nora knew he carried a derringer. You'll fight me. That would be convenient, the town troublemaker attacking a respectable businessman. Is that what you are? Nathan asked, his voice deceptively calm. A respectable businessman who burns down buildings because a woman chose someone else. A murmur went through the crowd. Blackwell's face flushed with anger. You're a fool, Prescott, he spat. You always have been. You think you can build something worthwhile on that worthless piece of land. You think that woman chose you for anything but pity. Nathan's fists clenched, but he held his ground. Is that what this is about? Your wounded pride? This is about knowing your place, Blackwell snarled. You're nothing but a cowhand who got lucky with a land claim, and she's just a woman playing at being a doctor. Neither of you belongs here, taking what's rightfully mine. His words rang out in the quiet street, damning in their naked jealousy and spite. The crowd shifted, muttering amongst themselves, and Nora could see the tide of opinion turning against Blackwell. Nathan seemed to sense it too. His posture relaxed slightly as he looked around at the gathered townspeople. Is that how the rest of you feel? He asked. That Nora Jenkins doesn't belong here, healing your children and easing your pain, that I don't belong breeding horses that bring buyers from 3 states. Sheriff Davis stepped forward. You know that's not how we feel, Nate. You and Miss Jenkins have been nothing but good for Salida. Others murmured agreement. Mrs. Peterson, whose daughter Nora had treated for fever, spoke up clearly. Miss Jenkins saved my Emily when Doc Sanders said there was no hope. I don't care if she's a woman or the Queen of England, she belongs here. Blackwell looked around, seeing support slipping away. His face contorted with rage as he pulled the derringer from his pocket. Shut up, all of you. Women screamed and people scattered as he pointed the gun at Nathan. Nora's heart stopped. This ends now, Blackwell said, his finger on the trigger. Before he could fire, Sheriff Davis drew his own weapon. Drop it, Blackwell. Don't make this worse than it already is. For a moment, Blackwell hesitated, wild-eyed and cornered. Then, with a cry of frustration, he turned the gun toward Nora. Nathan moved faster than Nora thought possible, throwing himself in front of her as Blackwell fired. The shot echoed down the street, and Nathan staggered, clutching his side. Nate! Nora screamed, catching him as he fell to his knees. Sheriff Davis's return shot caught Blackwell in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the ground. Deputies rushed forward to secure him, but Nora's attention was solely on Nathan. Let me see, she commanded, pulling his hand away from the wound. Blood seeped through his shirt, but as she examined him, relief flooded through her. The bullet grazed your ribs. It's not deep, Nathan grimaced. Feels deeper than it looks. Take him to the apothecary, Samuel directed, helping Nathan to his feet. We'll treat him there. As they half-carried Nathan down the street, the townspeople followed, concerned and offering help. Inside the apothecary, Nora cleaned and bandaged the wound with practiced hands, though they trembled slightly at the thought of how much worse it could have been. You could have been killed, she scolded as she worked, tears threatening despite her efforts to remain professional. Couldn't let him hurt you, Nathan replied, wincing as she applied antiseptic. Besides, it worked out. Everyone saw his true colors today. Indeed, while Nora tended to Nathan, Sheriff Davis came to report that Blackwell had been arrested and was being held for attempted murder and suspected arson. His father's been telegraphed in Denver, Davis added. But from what I hear, even the old man's patience has run out with Edward's antics. Later, as Nathan rested in Samuel's parlor, surrounded by well-wishers bringing food and offering assistance, Nora sat beside him, holding his hand. I thought I might lose you today, she said quietly. Never, he promised, squeezing her fingers. Takes more than a dandy with a pop gun to keep me from you. 2 days later, the elder Mr. Blackwell arrived from Denver. After visiting his son in jail, he called on the Jenkins apothecary, where Nathan was still recovering. I've come to offer my sincere apologies, he said formally, standing hat in hand in Samuel's parlor. My son's actions are inexcusable. I've arranged for him to be committed to a sanitarium in the East. His instability has been a concern for some time. What about the charges against him? Nathan asked, sitting up straighter despite Nora's cautioning hand on his arm. The judge has agreed to suspend prosecution pending Edward's treatment, Blackwell Sr. explained. Provided there's no objection from you as the injured party. Nathan and Nora exchanged a look. What about the apothecary? Nora asked. And the rumors he spread about Nathan's ranch. I intend to make full restitution for the fire damage, Blackwell assured them. As for the rumors, I've already spoken to Mr. Davidson and clarified that there was no truth to them. Your agreement with his family stands, Mr. Prescott. After he left, Nora turned to Nathan. What do you think? Can we trust him? Old man Blackwell has always been fair, Nathan replied thoughtfully. Unlike his son, and I believe he's genuinely ashamed of what happened. So we move forward. Nora asked. Nathan pulled her close. We move forward. Together. The wedding was held in October when the cottonwoods along the creek had turned golden and the mountains were dusted with the first snow. It was a simple ceremony in Salida's small church, but it seemed the whole town turned out to witness it. Nora wore a cream-colored gown with lace that Samuel had ordered from Denver and carried wildflowers that Nathan had gathered that morning. Nathan, clean-shaven and solemn in his best suit, waited for her at the altar with an expression of wonder as she walked toward him on Samuel's arm. Dearly beloved, the preacher began, his voice carrying through the packed church. When it came time for the vows, Nathan took Nora's hands in his. I, Nathan, take thee, Nora, to be my wife, he said, his voice steady and sure. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death us do part. Nora repeated the words, her heart so full she could barely speak. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. The celebration afterward was held at the Double P, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns hanging from the trees. There was music and dancing, feasting and laughter. Samuel beamed as he watched his niece whirl in her new husband's arms. As the sun began to set, Nathan drew Nora away from the crowd, leading her to the small rise where they had sat months before. "Happy, Mrs. Prescott?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly, leaning against him. "Do you remember the social when we first danced?" Nathan asked, his voice soft against her hair. "Of course." "Some of the men laughed when I told them I was courting you," he admitted. "Said a fine Philadelphia lady like you would never settle for a rough cowboy. Said I was reaching above my station." Nora turned in his arms, looking up at him with surprise. "You never told me that." Nathan smiled, tracing her cheek with his finger. "I told them, laugh now if you want, but you'll see when she smiles at me, and I was right." He kissed her gently. "They're not laughing anymore." As the light faded and the stars appeared, the newlyweds stood together on the hilltop, looking out over what was now their land, their home, their future. In the distance, the lanterns from the celebration twinkled like earthbound stars, and the sound of music drifted up to them on the evening breeze. "They're playing our waltz," Nathan observed. "Then we should dance," Nora replied, stepping into his arms. There, under the vast Colorado sky, they danced to the distant music, moving together as naturally as the rhythm of their shared heartbeats. Years later, when their children asked how they knew they were meant to be together, Nora would tell them about a dusty day in Salida when gunshots rang out and a cowboy dove behind a water trough to save her. Nathan would add the part about the town social and how some men laughed when he chose her hand. "They laughed when I chose her hand," the cowboy would say, with a wink to his wife. "Then I told them to laugh when she smiles at me." And Nora would smile every time, that special smile that even after all their years together still made Nathan's heart skip a beat. Their love story became part of Salida's lore, told and retold through generations. The lady doctor and the rancher who built something beautiful together against all odds. The Double P grew and prospered, as did Jenkins' apothecary, which eventually expanded into a proper medical practice when Nora completed her formal training. They faced hardships, harsh winters, drought years, the challenges of raising 3 strong-willed children, but they faced them together, their bond only strengthening with time. And every year, on their anniversary, Nathan would take Nora to their special spot on the hill, where they would dance under the stars to music only they could hear. It was on their 50th anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, that Nathan repeated the words that had become a family legend. "They laughed when I chose her hand," he said, his voice older but still strong, "but I told them to laugh when she smiles at me." And Nora, her chestnut hair now silver but her eyes still bright, smiled that same smile that had captured his heart all those years ago in a dusty frontier town called Salida.